coming to our second workshop session for our health policy camp. It's been an amazing last 2 weeks. I've learned a lot more than I knew coming in. That I'm definitely gonna use going forward. As I try to build out this advocacy network in the city. But first, I just want to start off by introducing myself. My name is Emil Hudson. I'm the parent organizer for AJE, and I'll also be your moderator for today's panel. I would also like to take a moment to welcome the rest of my incredible team. As part of the health justice team, I'm working alongside Dr. Chioma Oru, who serves as our health justice project coordinator, and Daniela Gonzalez Rios, who is our health justice, who is our dedicated health justice coordinator. I'll be monitoring the chat. It will be me monitoring the chat today, so please don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have any questions. I'm gonna be monitoring the meeting, but I'll also be looking through the chat to see, whoever may need some help with some clarification. I also want to note that the Zoom toolbar, you have an option. There's an option that says transcript if you need captioning during the panel. So please write in the toolbar. You'll have access to live captions if you need. And finally, I just want to mention that we have a live binder. We were talking about it before, but just to bring it back up, where you can access all your resources, including the one pages, the panelist bios, presentation slides, and absolutely. And Chioma, if you can, could you drop the link in the chat when you get a chance for the live binder for anyone who doesn't have it. So this evening, we're diving into a conversation about mutual aid and also about youth transitions, and a bit how they tie hand in hand. We have two panelists today who, I've had a great time working with for the past couple months, and I've learned a lot from while they've been here in Salima Driss and Nila Morton. Salima is going to be talking to us today about mutual aid, and Nila Morton will be discussing youth transitions. Give me 1 second. And I know that before we go into our first panel today, hold on, let me let somebody in. Before we go into our first panel today, I know that Chioma wants to go over some of our first poll questions with you all, just so we can get an idea of where your head is at regarding the topics today. So Chioma, if you want to hop in with the first poll, I'll bring it over to you.
Okay, good evening again, everybody. And I'm going to ask 2 questions. So Salima is going to do the first workshop, and it's going to be on mutual aid. So we're going to start with the preliminary mutual aid questions. Give me 1 second, please. Please bear with me. Okay, so first question here is, have you ever participated in a mutual aid effort in your community? First answer is yes, I've organized. Yes, I've received support. No, but I want to. No, I'm not sure what mutual aid means. All answers are perfectly okay and are welcome. Please take the time to respond. Okay, it looks like majority of people, and 3 out of 7, say that no, they are not sure what mutual aid means. So you're in the right place. And in a few, and then also equally, there are folks that say yes, they've received support, and only 1 has actually organized and contributed to a mutual aid. So very excited to introduce to those who haven't heard before, and to those who've received it. Let's get under the hood. Okay, so I'm going to do 1 more question for now, and that is this one. So, what does mutual aid mean to you? And considering that some of you have not heard of mutual aid before, take your most educated guess on it. So, a way to share and care, another name for charity, something only exists, something only activists do, or not sure. So let's see. We have 5 participants did say it's a way to share resources and care, and 2 saying unsure. We're at 70%, so hopefully a few more people will answer before I end this poll in just a second. All right. Great, thank you. I'm going to share the results for that. So it seems like, folks are aware, or majority of folks are aware that it's a way to share resources and care, and some folks don't know what it is, or don't have a guess as to what it means. So definitely looking forward to this workshop. And we're going to stop for now. Back to you, Emil.
Thank you for that, Chum. Yeah, I have a basic understanding of mutual aid, but I definitely look forward to Salima diving into it and really giving us a broader understanding. And for those who already know about it, I definitely look forward to hearing your input. Um and with that being said, I want to go into our first workshop on We Keep Us Safe, Mutual Aid for Disability Justice. And I want to first introduce our panelist, Salima Driss, who joined AJE in 2025 as a family support specialist, but she has been committed to mutual aid and community organizing efforts and it's been central to her life for a long time. This is somebody who works diligently every day, and I see it, and I just can't wait for her to educate us today. So Salima, I'll pass it off to you.
Okay, thank you so much. It would be awesome if you could share the
Oh yeah,
slide.
I'm gonna share my screen.
Thank you so much. Okay. Well, hello everyone. I'm Salima. I'm so excited that you all came. Um, as Emil briefly mentioned, I work at AJE, but in my spare time, I am a mutual aid organizer as well, and I've been doing that for about 5 years now, and so I'll get more into that later. Um, but yeah, first, as you can see, this is the title of this workshop, We Keep Us Safe, Mutual Aid for Disability Justice. And I think, this graphic that I included, mutual aid is an act of love. I wanted to include that to kind of open things up and start us off because, I think as we'll kind of get into a little bit more, it can feel like a very abstract or broad concept. But for me, I think the core of the way I think about it is just caring for my community and putting myself in a position to be cared for when that needs to happen. And doing that in kind of whatever ways feel right at the time and whatever ways are necessary. So yeah, next slide, please. Thank you. So first, I'll give you kind of a general description or definition of mutual aid. I want to kind of emphasize that it depends on the community, it depends on the network, it depends on, how you're practicing it, but at its core, I would say that mutual aid is a way to create a community network of care, redistributing resources, redistributing from folks who currently have more resources and putting that into the community that is in need of resources at a certain time. And, that balance can shift. Mutual aid shouldn't be a hierarchical thing at the end of the day. And in an ideal world, it should be everyone is equal and equally contributing when they can and receiving when they can. So I think that's an important thing to highlight too, especially in a disability justice lens and ensuring that everyone is you know, receiving and contributing within their own capacity. And so briefly, just the history of mutual aid, I think probably a good amount of folks might have heard of it during the pandemic and in the years following, because I think it kind of had a resurgence, which is incredibly exciting and how I got involved with it. But it has a very long, rich history, even if, people who have practiced it in the past haven't necessarily called it mutual aid. Um, many sources kind of credit it first to indigenous communities and the way they practice and have practiced historically a system of care outside of, capitalist and government structures. And so I think that's important to acknowledge, is that it's not a new thing, even if it's, new to some of us. And then kind of shifting quite a lot more recently. Hopefully you're all familiar with the Black Panther Party, active during, the 1960s and 70s. And that's kind of a more contemporary way that a lot of people think of mutual aid, because, as I put briefly on the slides, they had a really successful and exciting free breakfast program that they would offer to school children primarily. And that was a way to, they were political organizers, of course, and mutual aid goes hand in hand with that in many ways. But they also, were directly on the ground in their community and giving to, the children, and the people who needed it most. And so I think that's a part of their work, and many other kind of quote unquote radical or political groups' work that sometimes gets overlooked. It's not all protests and that sort of thing. Mutual aid is radical in and of itself, because we're taking care of each other, and we're not waiting for anyone else to do it. And then, in our current landscape, you may have heard of Food Not Bombs. There's kind of chapters in that all across the country. There's a couple that work in the areas around DC and DC as well. So that's one you may have heard of. And it's, these networks kind of operate under different names, but they operate in many different systems, and they may be called Food Not Bombs, they may be called so and so mutual aid network, that sort of thing. But that's just a very brief history. It's a really interesting history to look more into. But I think the biggest thing I wanted to highlight with this is that all types of people, and yes, Ebony, exactly. Mutual Aid Ward 7 or Mutual Aid Ward 8. Yeah, those they kind of exist more so in local spots a lot of the time. That's yeah. But I wanted to highlight the history first, because I think it's really important and valuable to highlight how especially more marginalized groups have always used mutual aid to protect ourselves and distribute resources amongst ourselves. So yeah, next slide, please. Okay, thank you so much. All right, so I mentioned briefly that I've personally been involved in mutual aid for about 5 years, and this isn't about me, but I think I can offer some insight into what it looks like in my day-to-day life. So essentially, my mutual aid network, it's called Prince William County Mutual Aid, because that's where I currently live, just outside of DC. And we operate in our county, hence the name. It started with me and a couple of other college students at the time. We'd all, read about mutual aid and heard about new networks kind of popping up during the pandemic to meet the just immense need during that time. And, there was an increase in government resources in some places, of course, but it was often not sustainable or not enough. And so that's kind of when we got involved locally and tried to start something up. And, in the summer of 2020 and the spring, for my group, we began by trying to fundraise just via virtual mechanisms, just things like Venmo and that sort of thing. We started via social media, which was unfortunately kind of necessary during that time. It couldn't be as in person as much. And so we were able to start assisting people with rent and grocery deliveries. And from the beginning, something we always emphasized was, receive when you are in need of receiving and give when you have more than you need. And again, that kind of fluctuates in different points of people's lives. and different times. And the pandemic was a time when, it was more difficult to access government resources. So I think that allowed the mutual aid network I'm a part of, to flourish a little faster than it might have otherwise. And with that, it wasn't just sharing the resources. That was a key part of it, but it was also community building. I think, as organizers or caregivers or whatever our position might be, it's difficult sometimes to um authentically build community because we're very focused on survival. But I think, allowing ourselves to connect and allowing ourselves to um find moments of joy and that sort of thing is also an emotional mutual aid, if you will. Um, and so that's something that's continued as my own mutual aid group has continued to today, where the primary thing that we do is monthly food distributions. We serve about 40 to 50 families a month at a local mosque that lets us use their space for free. And people come and get groceries that last them about a week. It's not a permanent solution, and ideally it would be even more resources for more people, but it's been really exciting to see it grow and see people realize that mutual aid can have a direct impact in their daily lives, either as an organizer or someone who's a recipient. And it's been just this last month, we had someone that's been coming since January for groceries, and this time she was able to also share a donation of clothing for us for the event. And so I thought that was a really nice display of how the roles kind of go. They can shift and change as people's needs and positions change. Um, and the last thing I wanted to highlight on this slide is just this really nice quote. What happens to one happens to us all. We can starve together or feast together. All flourishing is mutual. This is from a great book about kind of indigenous food practices and communities. And I thought this was a beautiful quote that kind of sums up the solidarity aspect, which kind of relates a bit more to disability justice, which I'll talk a bit more about now. If we could go to the next slide. Thank you. All right, so shifting gears a little bit, hopefully many of you are familiar with the idea of disability justice. I think inherently that relates very much so to mutual aid because mutual aid networks, they try to be led by the most marginalized, serving the most marginalized as much as possible. And, it's inherently radical to operate outside of the government and outside of, so-called charities. And this idea of solidarity is a big thing both in mutual aid organizing and disability justice. But just to give a brief definition of disability justice is it kind of allows and promotes us examining the systems that impact and oppress disabled people in this country and beyond. And I think the way mutual aid can play into that is allowing us to imagine systems that are outside of what oppresses many disabled people, and allowing people to truly invest in their communities and in each other. I think that's, community is a word that I've said a lot during just this chat, and that you hear a lot in mutual aid spaces and disability justice spaces. But to me, that's kind of the highest priority of any of this work is finding the people around you that are like-minded or, dealing with similar issues and finding the ways that you can support each other. And that's kind of the next piece that I wanted to talk about before I open up to other thoughts and questions is, I think being here and learning a bit more about how this can look, and a small bit about the history is you understand that's being here is kind of your first step. And being here in a space with people that are interested in creating alternative ways to support each other and whether that be physically, emotionally, financially, whatever way that you're in need right now, there's likely someone else dealing with that, or whatever you have the capacity to give right now, there's someone that's looking to receive that sort of thing. And so, I've talked about what mutual aid looks like for me, but I think it looks different for everyone and it looks different for every community, certainly. And so I think that's important to recognize as well, is kind of, you don't have to dive in and be ready to show up every single week at a food distribution or things like that. You can start by um, just talking to the people around you and the people that you know and figuring out how you can support each other just within your school community or within your street you live on or that sort of thing. So I think that can be kind of a helpful way to think about it if you don't want to, kind of get involved in a network that's already existing. You can create your own even in a smaller way. And so I know we have 17 participants. So I'm going to try asking a couple of questions of you all and maybe putting them in the chat, putting your answers, and just kind of giving us some space to think about your own individual next steps and what mutual aid as a tool for disability justice and your own community building might look like. Um, but first, I wanted to ask if anyone had any big questions about what mutual aid is or what it can look like. I think it might be easiest to put that in the chat if there are questions.
And if you put questions in the chat, I'll read them out too.
That works well.
Well, I don't have
No, go ahead.
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. Especially something you mentioned earlier about how mutual aid isn't a new concept, and I really wanted to like touch on that because it is really one of the oldest concepts, if not the oldest concept. Um, and I think that the more we apply it to these times, especially now where you're getting hit, especially how you're talking about how mutual aid is designed to fill the gaps of government resources. This is the time where those gaps are getting larger and larger. And so I think that our understanding of mutual aid, especially now, is like almost like survival at this point.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's where the solidarity piece comes in. And that's another big term, but that can just mean, talking to people and being ready to support if people need that support, um, and understanding what other people are going through. I think that's incredibly important. Yeah, I love that point, Ebony. It can open up more opportunities for families to connect and remove differences. Yeah, I think it sounds cliche, but I think something I've learned in my mutual aid organizing is we all have far more in common than we don't, just by living in this country under these systems, that sort of thing. And, many of us here having connections to disability in one way or another, that's another thing that many of us have in common. Um, and I think that's, the community building, that's where it becomes really important as well. Yeah, I love what you just put in the chat, Lele. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Yeah, that's a beautiful way to put it. I think the trust part is something that is difficult in many ways, and that's not something I can give a clear answer for, but I think just being open to connecting is just such a big part of it.
And I think what Lele said is really important too about how she said to refuse capitalism. Because when you talk about the free breakfast programs with the Black Panthers, um, a lot of people think that the guns is what scared the United States government, but the free breakfast programs was actually the biggest threat to the United States government because it literally refused capitalism because it creates solidarity in the community so to where we no longer have to rely on corporations. And so it's like mutual aid is like literally and the government saw that and they saw what the Panthers were doing and they said, oh no, if this spreads, we lost control.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think I briefly mentioned that I believe, and many organizers who do this work believe, that it's inherently radical just to, be involved in mutual aid, because you are, again, this point we keep going back to, resisting and rejecting what the systems are offering. Because I think many of us recognize that it's not enough. And, that's where I think also like the emotional piece of mutual aid can come in, and being there to support each other, with the toll that living in these systems can take as well. But yeah, that's a really huge point, and something that I think is forgotten about the Black Panthers a lot, which is part of why I wanted to mention the breakfast program as well. Yeah.
Also, something that I want to say is like it also showed the importance of a village. That's something that I always have heard, but I think that's something that we need, especially now with what's going on in this country, that we need a village. And I always see mutual aid. I always known about mutual aid, but like when some people hear, especially on social media, they think it's just like people just want a free handout, but it's not. It's about community. It's about coming together because when we able to come together as a community, we able to fight back against the oppression and everything that's going on in the world because then we actually see that we have each other for support and not seeing each other as differences or as enemies.
Yeah, I love that point. And I think, the fact that mutual aid has become kind of a buzzword, so to say, online, I think that's a good thing in many ways, because more people are learning about it. But I think it does come with the misconceptions, and you'll see this point on this slide that I didn't touch on as much: solidarity, not charity. And I think that's mentioned in the live binder handout on mutual aid as well. It's not intended to be just a one-time thing. It's a continued, sustained network of care. I think that's something that differentiates it from many resources that are available. It's just more personal, and it's community based. Most of these networks are local, which I think is another really important piece right now, is connecting locally and filling in those gaps wherever you can, just nearby. Yeah. Oh,
That
yes,
was an
sorry. Oh,
Yeah, I was about to say that was an amazing idea.
I forgot to mention this about my particular group. We have a community garden going right now. It's pretty small, but we have someone that actually works with local farmers as their job, and so she's been helping us create a community garden. That's a big part of a lot of networks. It's such a diverse landscape. It's very hard to cover that in a short presentation. But yeah, I think, the fresh food aspect is something that's very exciting, and like making that more accessible is definitely a huge part, and something that always could be improved upon. Yeah, so thank you for bringing that up. Um, yeah, I think we have a little bit more time. But I had a couple other questions to kind of get people thinking about what mutual aid means to you. And I think, the title for this workshop involves a phrase that I love: we keep us safe, and what I put on the first slide, we take care of us as well. And so another question I wanted to ask, to maybe put in the chat, is what does we take care of us or we keep us safe, what does that mean to you, or how do you think that ideology can be a part of your life? That's a big question, but if anyone has any thoughts in the chat, I would love to hear them.
I can add in and just say that mutual aid was so important for so many families in my little ecosystem during the pandemic. So many things were coming up. There were organizations distribute each ward in DC had a mutual aid network. Some are still activated. Unfortunately, others aren't. They were giving out diapers, they were giving out incontinence supplies. Also, important things for children and youth during the pandemic was giving out laptops. One partner that we are developing a relationship with, the Ward 6 Mutual Aid Network, continues to actually it started during the pandemic, but now they're doing it regularly where they're giving out, technology devices at their back to school events every year and support started a cooperative just to support with tech for families. So those are some of the things that we saw actively during the pandemic. Of course, the regular stuff like food distribution. There are even some mutual aids that were giving out cash. So there, I mean, to help pay your rent. You remember there was like a moratorium during the pandemic. So they were so important for our families. And I was very happy to refer to the ones we know, which is kind of where I caught the bug to say, okay, we need sustainable places to continue to do this.
Yeah, the point about sustainability is a big one, like sustaining a mutual aid network or practice. And that's something that's come up a lot in what I've been doing for the last few years. And I think, you know, I always emphasize this, just even in my own group, but the we take care of us point, like that's in a broader sense for sure, and like providing rent money when we can, providing diapers, providing whatever material goods we can, but also the emotional piece and like the mental health piece, I think is super important, kind of overlooked sometimes as well. Um, yeah, I see Ebony has a hand up.
Yes. I like to comment on the fact that I personally have been a beneficiary of the services you guys offer. And I did come in a bit late, but I wanted to note that the rental health services, I was fleeing from domestic violence. And when I got into my new place, I was a little bit short. When you have different perceptions on what you should do in a situation, you can lose support. And so you guys stepped in and filled that gap for my family. Okay. And not only that, the referrals you gave, it connected me with other services. And come to find out, we're all just a big tree connected. So I'm grateful for the fact that you guys offer the services to the community because I was a recipient.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I'm a more recent member of the team at AJE, but that's been really exciting and heartening to see, and just the fact that this workshop is part of the health policy camp, that we're kind of embracing mutual aid, because a lot of groups like this and organizations don't always do that. And it has like a real material impact. And so yeah, but yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. All right, I've kind of lost track of time, if I'm honest, but I'm gonna ask one of the other questions that I've got.
Yeah.
You wanna pop in?
No. Go ahead. Go ahead. Finish off. I mean, we're gonna do some polls after that, but finish off your question.
Okay, awesome. Another big question, because these are very big ideas, but I just wanted to kind of get everyone thinking and imagining. So what do you think or how do you think mutual aid could support you / your family right now, either as, you know, an organizer of it, which is the term that is commonly used for, you know, organizing things to be received, or as a recipient? You know, how do you, just based on what we've kind of talked about today, how do you envision mutual aid potentially being something that you'd be engaged in going forward? And you can just pop that in the chat, or, you know, even think about it amongst yourself. Well, while people are, you know, kind of thinking to yourselves, and as we kind of get ready to wrap up this portion, I would just say, um, there's a lot of value in just being here. Amazing first step to kind of demystify what mutual aid is a little bit, and start thinking about how that factors into a disability justice lens as well. But I would just encourage everyone to kind of think about what this sort of alternative to government resources and those sort of things can look like for you, and how you might want to start connecting to the people around you, and what you can offer for them, and what they can offer for you, because it goes both ways. And the community building piece is, you know, the biggest thing that I would kind of emphasize to take forward. So
I saw I'm gonna read out something I saw in the chat that I think is a great idea that Ebony had is I think we can host fairs for high school students needing hours to graduate and get them involved to help raise funds. I'd love to assist with that. Which I think is a good idea.
That may be a perfect transition to the next panel.
Yeah, I can't lie. Well, I'm gonna read some more, but I'm gonna go back to that because I also like Farah's idea about just doing a food clothing donation drop off at locations, and also technology for special needs children like that. And I love the fact that y'all have a community garden. So I'm always for that. I think that's a big part of it, you know, being connected nature wise. But yeah, I'm gonna give people a second to answer, and then I'm gonna let Chioma go into her into the polls, into the next phase of our polls.
Sorry, can you please stop sharing the slides for a second? I
Oh,
think it would be less things on the screen with that. Thank you so much, Salima. And I just want you to stay right there because we're going to do a few more polls going into the next panel. And I'm not sure we're going to have transition. Are we going to take a break or not? But before you answer that question, let me go ahead and ask the polls so we can. Thanks, Salima. Okay, so I will launch the next couple of polls here. The first question is, which area do you and or other families do you know need support that can be offered through a local mutual aid pod? And you can pick more than one for this answer. So please answer the questions, think about them, maybe all. School supplies, food, advocacy tips, system navigation help, referrals to healthcare providers, including mental health, peer wellness check-ins. Not sure, you need more examples. And there was possibly we could have put another option, which is other, and you tell us what you want. Okay, so we're 85%, and it looks like the most at 11 people, peer wellness check-ins seems to be quite popular, but also our food, advocacy tips, supplies, all of them seem to be important in one way or the other. So we receive this. Thank you so much. And we will, of course, follow up. And this is the last poll for Salima's workshop here. And that is, what do you think is the biggest barrier to building mutual aid in the community? You think it's time or capacity, trust or safety concerns, lack of resources, not knowing where to start? What's in the way? What's in your way? You can personalize it. Give a few more minutes. We're 50%. We'll love a couple more people. Great, great, great. We're about hitting our goal. All right, perfect. So it looks like the most responses we have are not knowing where to start. So you are in the right place and good company. Next most popular is lack of resources. And so, and the rest seem to also be concerns, but of a less capacity. So thank you all for that. So I don't know, maybe we'll intro Nila and then we'll go into her pre-poll questions, give you guys a brain break. Thank you so much, Salima. And back to you, Mil.
Yeah, and I'm gonna give you guys about 2 or 3 minutes just to get your mind right before we go into our next section. And I also wanted to share some ideas that people put in the chat while we were doing that poll. And remember, what did Amy say? Oh yeah, she said it would be cool to have an app to track different programs in real time. I think that ties into exactly what Fari said around technology. And that'd be beautiful. I think we need to find some coders because I don't know how to code, but we do need an app. That'd be great. Um, see if we have any other.
Some coders, some editors, some
Right,
hackers. We need them all.
right. Definitely some hackers. Absolutely. Mhm. Right. So moving into the next phase of this workshop, we're gonna have Nila Morton talk to us about helping DC youth win and just have a conversation on secondary transitions, touching a bit on Ebony's suggestion um, on having high school students help out to get their community service hours. I think that was a beautiful way to transition. But before we start off, I just want to give a quick introduction into Nila, who is the youth coordinator for AJE. She's a disability advocate. And first became involved in advocacy while she was undergraduate, addressing issues of ableism and accessibility on her college campus. Um, Nyla is an extremely vibrant spirit and has a wealth of knowledge that I can't wait for her to share with y'all today. And so without further ado, Nyla, you can take it away. Let me share the screen.
Well, hold on. Before you go, I do
I'm
have
so
some
sorry. I'm so
preliminary.
sorry. All
Okay.
right, so
I
we got one
promise
or
to
two.
move along quickly with these as quickly as possible. So please indulge me we're going to do 4 questions right now. All right. So here is question 1. So, how familiar are you with the early childhood special education transition processes from birth to 3 years old in DC? Very familiar, somewhat familiar. I've heard of it, but need more info. Not at all. 64, 71%. Okay. So it looks like, please keep answering the questions, but it looks like what we have so far is that 7 out of 10 are very familiar. I'm not surprised because majority of us here are caregivers and probably have gone through it ourselves. We've learned the hard way, for trial by fire. There are 2 people who don't know what it is at all, and so this is a great place to be about that. So I'm going to end the poll and share it. And I'll try and move quickly along to the other 3 ones. The next poll here is how many of you are familiar with early childhood special education process from 3 to 5 years old? That's pre-K 3, pre-K 4 in kindergarten to lower elementary. That's 1st to 3rd grade. So the transition from preschool to lower elementary. So we have 6 out of 11 respondents are saying very familiar. Okay. So also quite familiar with folks, and not at all, perfectly okay. Next question is, how familiar are you with the transition process from childhood as a whole to adult services for youth with disabilities? And very familiar, somewhat familiar, I've heard of it, but need more info, or not at all. And it looks like, I'll give it a minute because they're coming in quick for this one. Okay, it looks like the majority is 4 out of 11 are saying not at all, and 3 are saying very familiar, 3 are saying somewhat familiar. So we kind of have even distribution here, with majority being not knowing it at all. And the last one for now is, at what age should transition planning for youth with disabilities ideally begin in Washington, D.C.? Age 14, age 16, age 18, when they finish high school, or you're not sure? Okay, we got 100% here in terms of, 78% response rate, but 100% of those people said age 14, and that is legally the correct question, answer to that question in DC. So kudos to all of you. Back to you, Emil.
Thank you, Chairman, for that poll. And if we have no more questions, I actually want to pass it over to Nila so she can start her presentation on youth transitions.
Hello, everyone. Emil, can you pull up the slide, please? Well, hello, everyone. I'm Nila Morton. I'm the youth coordinator at AJE, and today I'll be talking about helping youth win in DC. A conversation about secondary transition. Before I start, I want everyone to know I'm not giving like a lecture or anything. Is I'm here to just to have a conversation. So if you have anything you want to say, you can chime in at any time. But yeah, next slide, please. So what is transitioning planning? So I want to just give like a definition. So transition referred to the process of moving from childhood to adulthood, and that includes changes in services and support. As y'all answered correctly, period. Love that. It starts at the age of 14. So it begins at the age of 14 during the IEP meeting. And what's really talked about during those meetings is the students' goals, preference, strengths. This is the time where family and multidisciplinary team input. That's when they put in an input about how they feel the transition planning should go. And this involves teachers, counselors, therapists. This is when transition assessment is had, and that kind of gives more information about the student's interests and also what support they would need, and also services and support, and making sure that it's yearly updates to make sure everybody is on the same page and that everything is flowing. So there won't be any stress when the time comes when the child or the student is about to graduate from college. Next slide, please. So how the transition plans are developed. So what happens is what is more, like I said earlier, is centered on the individual's like needs and their interests. So it includes post-secondary goals. So that includes like 2 or 4 year college, vocational technical school, employment, and also support in independent living. And that can look like when the student decide they want to move out of the house, what did that look like? What support they would need? And that can be like if they go to college and they live on campus, what services they would need to make sure that can happen. Or if they want to live in a group home to feel more independent. So those type of things, just supporting them in their next phase of life. Next slide, please. So to make sure that everybody is like on the same page, something that I feel like it would be great is journey mapping. And journey mapping is just basically creating plans together. So think of it more as like, you know how when it's the new year and you get a vision board, you got all your friends and you like, okay, this is my new year resolution. This is what I want to accomplish. Think of it like that, but just a little bit more organized. And it kind of just gives more of a timeline to make sure that you stay on track to achieve that goal. So what's very important about journal mapping, making sure that this student is involved with the decision making because they are the ones who, they know what they want to do after high school. They know what type of life they will want after high school. So it's very important to actively involve them in decision making. And also using visual tools. I feel like I mentioned earlier, um, doing like a vision board. I'm a very visual person, something that I do when I have a goal in mind. I like to set up, like, put it on a piece of paper or put it on a poster and like put it in my room so I can be like, okay, this is what I want to do. These are the steps I'm going to take so it can be easier. And also setting both ambitious and realistic goals. And when I say that, you want to be supportive of the student's goal, but you also want to make sure it's realistic in a sense to make sure they are able to achieve those goals and they're able to get the support and the services to make sure they achieve those goals. And also keeping in mind that sometimes, you know, the things they want to do, they may change, which is why it's always good to kind of check in each year to make sure that everyone is still on the same page or there's any changes. But it's always good to just be very supportive of the students, like whatever they want to do after high school, but also making sure that whatever it is going to be supported with the resources and the services to make sure they achieve those goals. Next slide, please. And as an example of this, it's like creating a vision statement with the student. Like, what is the student idea of life after high school for them? So, as I mentioned, like a visual board, so like a visual tool, so it can be easier to kind of keep track of what goal they want to accomplish and what support and services they would need. And something I love about the vision statement, it kind of reminds me. So, I got my master's in social work, and something in social work that we used to talk about whenever we have to help clients is called the miracle question. The miracle question is, what would you do if this issue disappears the next day? And that's like a tool that we use so people can use their strength so they can overcome that obstacle. Because whenever you ask that question, most people be like, oh, I would do this, I would do that. And it's like, okay, so let's work towards that goal of you being able to achieve those things. So that's how you kind of want to look at the vision statement, like you kind of looking at the step towards achieving that goal. Next slide, please. And it's very, very important to start planning early. I say this because time go by fast. You'll blink and then the student is almost ready to graduate. It's very important to start early because in the next slide, you will see why. So if it's very important because the education pathways. So there are two tracks. So you have the diploma track. The high school diploma track, that's when it meets the district and state's requirements. And obviously it opened up doors to post-secondary education and employment opportunities. And then you have that IEP certificate track, and this for students who may not meet the diploma requirement, but recognizes completion of IEP goals. And this is very important because depending on what track the student is on, it can have an impact on the outcomes, especially with the goals they have in mind that they want to achieve after high school. But I really want to note under the Individual with Disability Education Act, a student eligibility would be terminated upon receiving a high school diploma, but with the certificate, those services are not terminated. So it's always important to have that information when deciding what track you want your student to be on. Next slide, please. So something that is very important to bring up in the IEP meetings, as mentioned earlier, is very important that you meet at least once a year to keep everything updated. But some questions you may want to ask is, which track is my child on and why? I feel like it's very important to ask that question because you want to make sure everybody's is on the same page, but you also want to make sure that your child's on a track that's going to help them achieve their goals after high school. Because if they're on one track and once they get to a point where they're about to finish school, whatever they want to do could be impacted by that, whatever track they're on. Also, what support and adaptation can help my child succeed on a diploma track? This is also a very important question because each school can be different and each school can provide different services. And it's very important that you have an idea of what services is there and what type of support is there so your child can be successful in their academics, especially if they're on an IEP, because like I said, mentioned, each school have different ways of doing things, and you want to make sure that your child is able to succeed. And another good question to ask is, what are the future options with each outcome? And I feel like this is very important to ask, especially when you don't really have much knowledge about, each track, because when you in the meetings, you kind of just going with the flow, you're just trying to get as much information. But it's very important to know the options because this is a student's life. And when they graduate, whichever track that they are on, it can be impacted. Next slide, please. And employment. So it's very important to connect with community resources when it comes to employment, like vocational rehabilitation and the DC Rehabilitation Services Administration. And one thing I adore about this service is they in certain DC schools, and they have certain counselors that go around to the school where people can meet with them and be able to get resources that they need if a student is looking for employment after high school. I have it in at the end of the slide some resources that you can click because they're really known for helping people to connect when it comes to employment. And also there are local businesses and employment programs that students with disabilities can work at. It's this kind of brings back the mutual aid thing. There are certain organizations that are willing to help disabled students be able to have employment. And also, it's very important to connect with them because this is a great opportunity for the student to do job shadowing so they can actually see what type of work they want to do, internships that also gives students an idea of the type of work they want to do. So it's very good to connect with certain businesses and local businesses. So a student with disabilities can be able to have access and exposure to all the career options. Next slide, please. And this is just general resources. So the Job Accommodation Network, Jane, that is a good resource when it comes to accommodations and making sure that job are doing what they're supposed to do when it comes to accommodation for disabled employees. Also, the ADA National Network, they also do the same thing. And if say your child in the future want to work for the federal government, workforce recruitment program, that is a program that often open every, I believe, September or the beginning of October. And when someone signs up, they are able to get into the program. They have to update their resume. And that's when recruiters are able to go out and reach out to those who are interested in working in the federal government. It's a really good program, and a lot of disabled people who have worked in the federal government, they have used this program to help be connected to those jobs. So it's really good to have that as a resource. That's mostly like for later on, like after they graduated college type of thing, but it's still a good source to have when that time comes to look for jobs. Next slide, please. So this is a topic I'm excited to talk about because I have a lot of knowledge on this. It's addressing biases, implicit bias and ableism and transition planning. It's very important that we sometimes call out the elephant in the room during certain meeting, even if it can be uncomfortable. But we have to keep in mind that it is a student's future that is, we have to think about that because it's whatever that is decisions that is being made, it impacts the outcome of, in with their future. Next slide, please. So implicit bias. Implicit bias are unconscious attitudes and stereotypes that influence one's perceptions of the world and those who are in it. So this affects their behavior, their decision, and treatments of others. And ableism is a set of beliefs and practice that discriminate against people with disabilities. And there are three levels of ableism. There is personal. Personal is more like how individual feel about themselves as a disabled person. And the personal is mostly about how people interact with disabled people, more like, relationships. So they can be friendship, family, romantic relationship, more on that level. And systemic ableism. Systemic ableism is the more institutional level where there's certain policies and laws that impact disabled people from being able to thrive successfully in society. Next slide, please. So unfortunately, sometimes, especially when it comes to a student with disability, there are implicit biases that can influence people who are in the transition planning make certain decisions. And those decisions may not be beneficial for the student. It mostly can come from, having certain biases about people with disabilities. So, how implicit bias can show up is the assumption of the students having not being able to do anything or having limited expectation, like having very low expectation of a student's future and setting like less ambitious and like post school goals. Like, for example, I have a physical disability. I'm in a wheelchair. And I remember when it was time for me to be in the transition planning meetings, and I had a counselor who was trying to convince me that I shouldn't apply to college and that I should just try to find something else. Even though I was very like big on wanting to go to college, I was, I had my vision. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna get my degree. This is the type of job I want. And instead of giving me guidance on how to reach that goal, the counselor was trying to find a way for me not to go to college. And when I asked her why, she said that she didn't feel like I would be able to be successful in college because of my disability. So those type of things can happen. Not providing the appropriate support, as I mentioned in my between me and my the guidance counselor, like just not offering support or not offering like the services and things. And also there could be certain services and support that they give to somebody else, but they don't probably give to another student because of those implicit bias and that belief that they're not going to be able to succeed. And focusing more on limitations over strengths. spending more time on the limitation and challenges than the strength. Again, that kind of goes back to that belief of that a child is not able to do something because they are disabled. But it's very important we combat those biases because, like I mentioned, when you have implicit biases, it can affect decision making and it can affect the student's future. So one way to do it is strength-based planning. And that is like focusing on the student's capabilities and skills. And something I love in social work, we call it the strength-based perspective. And it's something that a lot of people don't realize when you go through an obstacle, when you go through challenges, there's certain strength that you develop when you're trying to overcome them. And you use those type of strength to help you kind of overcome like even more obstacles and challenges. And so this is kind of like how it applies here, using the child's capabilities, skills, and strength so they can be able to achieve their goal. Also addressing the bias in the team conversation. And it's okay to be like, hey, I noticed that you're not giving as much support to my child. I noticed that when we have a conversation that you always tell my child they should do this instead of that, and I really don't appreciate it. It's okay to like address the elephant in the room, even though it can maybe be uncomfortable, but you have to keep in mind it is someone's life that's going to be impacted because of those biases. And also being encouraging, like have high expectations and also offer appropriate support. Be very encouraging. I know for me, something I love to write, and that's one of my biggest skills. And that's something that has helped me with and when I was in undergrad, because I got my bachelor's in psychology and then I got my master's in social work, and writing is a very essential skill to have, and that helped me. So was something that I had to get another guidance counselor. She pointed that out, like that was my skill. And also she helped me get into a writing club during my senior year that really helped. So focusing on like the skills and also be very encouraging because that can really help when there's someone there who is encouraging you and uplifting you. It does make a difference. Next slide, please. And this is resources for families. So like this is the DC Transition Services. So you had DCPS Transition Services, and then the Supporting Family Community of Practice. And AJE have a playlist about secondary transition, which our family specialist, she talks about, her name is Tamisha. She also talks about transitioning, planning secondary transitioning sometimes. And this is a playlist of all the videos talking about it. And there's also online resources, which are the National Technical Assistance Center of Transition and White Laws, which is a special education law and advocacy. So this is all the resources to give you more of a understanding of what secondary transitioning is and how the process goes, and with all the steps to make sure that a student is able to have a smooth transition from childhood to adulthood. And that's it for my presentation. I do have a question. I do. So what is do you know, like, do you have an idea what your child want to do after high school or what they see their life is after high school?
Yes. My child, Jack, he wants to be a veterinarian.
Ooh,
Yeah, so I believe.
that's awesome.
Yeah, but I don't know if you read the chat. I identify children that receive SPED services as exceptionally brilliant because they are. You know, you had an IEP and you are exceptionally brilliant. Look at you, girl, doing this presentation. Thank you, Nila.
Thank you.
Right.
Yes, I agree with that. I feel like in this world sometimes they try to convince us that students with disabilities are aren't worthy and that it won't be successful. But honestly, we are brilliant. We are out here thriving, and we're making sure that we are not allowing society's ableism to hold us down. We are here, and we're going to make sure we be heard.
My grandson, this is Fari. My grandson Daniel's class just had career day, and they had to pick the uniform, if you will, of the person they wanted to be. And so, okay, I'm sorry. Oh, hold on, baby. Almost, baby. So he picked the doctor's uniform. And so, as you were asking, what does your child want to be? I said, Dr. White. He said, don't page Dr. White right now. because he's playing his video game. So I always say, I really want to pour this into him because he always chosen. He is, I asked him to chill out on his video game and he's doing it. So, but a doctor.
I love that. Yes. That reminds me of my mom. She used to work in a hospital, and there was a doctor who is a heart surgeon, and he's in a wheelchair, and they have things set up for him so he can be able to perform his surgeries. And my mom said she wished that more people could see him so they can be aware that things are possible. You just, with the right support and the right resources, it can happen.
Yeah, the right resources is probably a big part of what you just said, because I think a key way to tie into what we talked about earlier, mutual aid, and this is that when you look at, children, especially children with IEP or struggling with disability, especially during that age range from 14 to 18, you could have a range of situations. And so for us to understand and have a community and a mutual approach to raising each other, and to raising our children, and to raising and caring for our loved ones, and caring for our aging parents or whatever it may be, to create a almost like Ebony said, like it's really in the word mutual. And I think that I just see such a vivid connection between what you're talking about and what Salima was talking about.
Mhm. Yeah, it really does tie in together. It's about support. As I mentioned in my presentation, it's very important to give that support, be encouraging, because when students aren't getting that, they start to believe what people are telling them, that they can't do something. So it's very important that we support each other, because support goes a long way. It does have an impact on someone's success in life.
We have a question from Linda, and then next Ebony.
Okay. Hi, Nila. I just want to thank you for your presentation, and I'm going to try and make this short. My daughter is now 32, so she's gone through this system. But what I wish was this presentation that you had would be that for parents, because parents need to understand early and often. And so they need to be able to apply this support to their children so that they're on the same page as the school and at home. So if this presentation can be broken down like that for parents, so that they can understand and be able to interject at those times that the student is changing and growing, and they too will be growing and helping them to support them in their journey along the way. So this is really kind of emotional for me, because I see the progress, but I know how important it is to start the parent process early and often, as soon as the diagnosis start, because when you talk about biases, parents don't see it or the limitation. They are just worried about the safety of their children. So sometimes they can hold them back because of wanting them to be safe or not to pursue something that they think they may be hurt. So we have to deal with that as well. So if we can do more of this with parents early, of understanding their child and that disability and how they move in the world, I think that would help so much. And even now, to understand it isn't over, it's a process, and it's a life process that you go through. Because as I said, as a parent, you are still in protective mode, and your child is growing and being in the world, an adult, but so you lack those skills. So I would love to see something like this presented to parents and caregivers early, so that they can move along in the process too, so they can understand.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like that would be very beneficial. Something I always say is that not everyone have a parent like my mom. My mom, she always been my advocate. She still is my advocate. And she will always will be. But my mom had to become very vocal. She had to learn very early. And my mom had me, I would say, pretty young. Um, and so she had to learn at a young age, like disability, ableism, how to look for it. But I will say she did have a little bit of privilege because she worked in the medical field. She always worked close with doctors. So they was able to tell her like, hey, this is what you need to look for. This is what you need to say in the meetings. This is what, you need to tell them like, hey, she has a physical disability and she does need services, but making sure to address those biases. And I feel like a lot of people, like you said, they're in protective mode, and also it's very new, so you just trying to navigate it the best way you can. And it would be helpful to have some guidance that's with more details, with steps, so it won't feel so overwhelming as you're going through the process.
Yeah. And especially if you have more than one child. So that is, yeah. So thank you.
Thank you.
Ebony, did you have a question? See, you got your hand.
Yes, I did. Well, more so of yeah, a question. My thing is denial, right? So I have a 9-year-old. She has 3 mental disabilities. She needs assistance understanding what she's been taught in the classroom. From what the advocates say, she has a disability one way in school. What I see at home, she's very needy, more than what they can see. And so where is the barrier drawn where the parent says, this is what I see, and the school system say, this is what we've tested on, but the tests don't match what they haven't tested at home, which is how is she behaving at home and environment from environment. So in my case, my daughter has 2 split environments in Maryland and DC. Does this program stretch to Maryland? And if so, how can we intertwine it for people who have court cases where they're sharing custody with their children? You got dad who doesn't believe it and mom who understands it. And me as mom, I've instituted the meetings with IEPs, getting that started with infant intolerance. But the problem is that was never on board. And if anybody who has a child with disabilities, you have to be on board. Otherwise, the child will be lack services, and then there'll be a big gap. So how can we intertwine these services for parents who have split households, but a disabled child, either mentally or physically?
Get a gun.
Oh,
A gun?
Mind gun. That's all she need, a mind gun.
but I feel like that's a good question, which is something that I would like to explore, because that is another barrier that parents do have to face, where there's a split household and like there's differences and how to navigate that. So I feel like that would be something I would like to research on to give a better, understanding of how to provide guidance to parents with that.
Raise hand, but not only that, there's been a situation where I'm seeing signs of her being touched against her will. And with her disability, she can be easily manipulated. The fear is that who's doing it? How able to do it? And where is the gap of her being watched? Off her diagnosis, she needs certain support, but me as mom's not as educated, right? In the sense of in the gap where she wasn't receiving services, how do I get that to be on board?
Yeah, looks like we lost her.
Or she
She's out in the woods, she mentioned, so maybe she come back on.
Yeah.
So let's go to
Chrysanthi, in the meantime, did you have a oh no, here she is right
Yeah, okay, yeah, sorry.
Okay.
I'll let Ebony finish.
I'm sorry, y'all, the Wi-Fi. I was saying, but denial has been the biggest hiccup in her plan. So every month we have the meetings with the Board of Education. They ask parents, what do you think? What are the developmental growths you see? What are the lacks? They'll tell me she does great in groups and she don't like to speak. At home, she is the child that understands everything. She can use and operate the stove and oven by herself. Whereas my 14-year-old questions, how does it work? Or she flinches at the sound of the sizzle. But my 9-year-old goes, oh, I got it, Mom. You want me to get this with the oven mats? What they see and what I see is different. And so could home studies be implemented? I know in a lot of court cases, home studies are implemented to see where the child should benefit, where the child should go. But in our case, it's 50-50. So what do I do?
I feel like that, to be honest, I don't have much knowledge on that. I feel like that's something I would have to like kind of dig into to give like the best possible guidance in that situation. Also, what I am thinking, because when it's a different behavior going on in two different environments, it's mostly about the comfortability. So something I want, probably you want to research is like, how comfortable is your child at school? Because I know for some people, like for some children, just this is just in general, um, if they tend to be more closed off and quiet, it means something probably has happened where they feel like they can't be as expressive. But then at home, because home is so familiar, it's very comfortable, and they feel safe, they can be a little bit more expressive. So there could be something that is going on that probably needs to be looked at, especially since she's behaving in two different ways and at two different locations.
Yeah, I definitely agree with
Sorry.
that.
I just wanted to say
I
thank
wanted
you,
to agree
Ebony,
with it.
for your vulnerability and your transparency. I'm not an expert, but based upon what you're describing, I would seek out the resources of a psychologist. I would encourage my child to start journaling as well, and you keep documentation. And ask open-ended questions when you're engaging with her after school.
Yeah, and also connect with a social worker. They're very good.
Those things already been instituted.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I know social workers they can, like, especially children's social work, and they can help with making them feel comfortable to actually express if something is going on and they're not able to express that. So I also would suggest that as well.
Yeah, they're not able to extract it out of her. As mom, especially when you yourself probably have, not you, but myself, I've been through some of the things I believe she's on the way of going. So from a professional standpoint, they may go, oh, this is common. I'm tired of the common diagnosis. I literally took my son to the emergency room for stomach pain. They said it's a stomach bug. They said they gave him a generic diagnosis. Just Googled it and gave him a paper. And I know a little bit about the body, the anatomy of the body. So I go, can you do an x-ray? And they go, why? I said, because the pains he's describing in the locations, it's not making sense. It doesn't equate to a virus. They did an x-ray and they saw he had backed up matter, fecal matter. Is that a virus or is that old parasites? It's parasites, and they know that. And so when they see you as a number or just another person to look at or to dismiss because of what they think, sometimes I think there's a big barrier in what the professional thinks and what the individual person posing as a professional thinks. And like in your case, Ms. Nyla, she underestimated you, and you prevailed past what she thought. She took her professional hat off and she put her personal hat on. And that's the problem in my case. I've gotten CPS involved. They've even said, I'm making her draw things to tell her story when clearly her hands move the crayon. What do I do? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry that you're having those experiences. And also thank you for being vulnerable and feeling comfortable enough to share that. Because I know that is difficult. I think we lost her again.
Well, real quick before she hops back on, Chris Anthony, I know you had a question. You've had your hand up for a minute, so feel free.
Yeah, I just have a question around because I have some time. My daughter's just 4.5 now. So, but she's had an IEP, or she's been in early stages. Not early, what is it? Like she's been basically having early intervention since she was 11 months old because I was her foster mom from when she was 6 months old. And so I've really just been her advocate, this whole time. And so, she has an IEP and, I'm very happy with the early learning center she's in and everything like that. But with all of the potential vulnerabilities with this administration around the Disabilities Act and just potentially, the decimation of the Department of Education on the whole, like how should we as parents or caregivers sort of get ahead of it or try to stay ahead of the potential things that, we don't necessarily control, so that we can, ensure that our kids continue to get those services that they need to sort of to thrive.
Yeah. To be honest, I don't want to say I don't know, but I don't because it's very uncertain with everything, the changes that are happening. I would say like for right now, like just being able to have those conversations and seeing like what long term like things that you can do to make sure that there's able to get those resources, and especially with all the changes. So for like right now, I don't really know specifically, but I just would say just start with having that conversation.
Any more questions? I want to open it up. Or if anybody who may have any comments, questions following Nyla's presentation. And if not, I want to actually thank Nyla. I appreciate you so much for your wisdom and the information you shared with us today. And I think it's a great segue from the conversation we had earlier to the conversations we've been having throughout the camp to the in-person parent cafe that we'll have tomorrow, where we can really talk about building, systems of mutual aid and begin to start thinking collectively. So I appreciate you. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Chioma, who's going to close it out with our last set of polls, and leave it to you, Chioma.
Right, and I'll do closing remarks right into that. So this is the last time you guys are going to hear from me in terms of the polls. All right, so question number 5 here is, which area of transition planning feels most overwhelming right now? Is it medical care, finding adult providers, vocational or job readiness, disability benefits, SSI, Medicaid, independent living, all of the above. And we see so far, all of the, of course, all of the above is the most popular response here. 8 out of 12 respondents are saying all of the above. The next most popular are vocational or job readiness and disability benefits, SSI, Medicaid. Okay, last question. Okay, after this session, how confident do you feel in helping your child or youth prepare for adulthood? Very confident, more confident than before, still unsure, or I need more guidance. Okay, wow, we got a 100% response rate here. And what we have is more confident than before as the most popular, very confident being next, and need more guidance. All answers are welcome, and we appreciate you taking the time. More about these polls, please, Emil or Danny, can you drop the evaluation link in the chat? Please take the time to fill those out. This is the last virtual session for the camp. But tomorrow we do have our end of camp celebration, which is going to be in the form of a parent cafe. I'm just going to quickly share my screen for a second here, just so you can grab the QR code. If you haven't already registered, please do. This is going to take place at 400 Galloway Street Northeast, but we do require you to register. This event is only for caregivers, those who are going to wear their caregiver hat, because it is an intimate space, and we are going to be sharing private things, and we want to make sure that we're creating as much safety as possible with each other. So please come with that intention. If you do plan on bringing others, and particularly for our parent ambassadors, we encourage you to do so, but have them register ahead of time. We will be providing ASL for those that may need it, and we had one person
Kioma,
to
sorry.
get that
The ASL interpretation won't be available.
won't be available tomorrow. So okay, apologies for that. We won't need it. The one person that we know needed the services won't be able to make it tomorrow, but we will be providing childcare. So children are welcomed. We have a great childcare provider who is one of us. So please bring your young people. And they will be occupied. Note that we will be giving you guys your swag bags for participating, and for our parent ambassadors specifically, we're speaking. For those others who are on here and are going to show up tomorrow, just know that you may or may not get a swag bag, all depending on the order of things. But if you do not get one tomorrow, which more than likely you will not if you're not a parent ambassador, we will be giving out first aid packets, which at the start of school year, which is our first small, humble step as an organization to participate in some mutual aid practices. So we'll be handing out information with some wellness products. Those you can get during the fall, but the packets we have for tomorrow are really for our ambassadors who are starting their leadership journey now. And so all the goodies, to tease you what's in there, you get your AJE folder, your AJE notebooks and pens and t-shirt and bag. And there'll be some small sensory wellness things in there. You're going to get a copy of a book. I think I have an extra copy here. Let me show you guys the copy. The book that we are likely going to be studying together once you get your books, Parent Ambassadors, is Care Work. It's what it's called. It's Dreaming Disability Justice. It's a modern classic for the disability justice movement. Please needle through. So our parent ambassadors are each getting a copy of this. And we very much look forward to seeing you tomorrow. It's going to be a good time. Food will be provided. Children are welcome, all ages. But we do want to keep it the caregiver space only. We will not be having any of our professional friends coming to wear their hat. But a caregiver is a very open thing. So if you're caregiving, please come to this Parent Cafe. And then after that, we will be circulating videos of the panel sessions on the AJE YouTube channel. Please follow AJE on social medias. I think everybody on here is on our mailing list. If not, because you registered and are participating in this camp, you will be in the future. We do look forward to being in community with all of you, whether you're an ambassador or not. And for those who are not parent ambassadors and maybe interested in becoming parent ambassadors, stay close, reach out to us. There'll be future opportunities to join the ranks as we'll continue to train cohorts in 3 leadership tracks. So we're training right now for our community health leaders. We also have a cohort of parent ambassadors. So actually, our OG parent ambassadors, Michelle Parrish is going to be leading up the parent ambassador training tomorrow, and there, some of us will be table hosts supporting that as well. That is a leadership track. That was our first leadership track. And as time progresses, we'll likely do another cohort for the parent ambassadors. And then we also have the school-based leaders, which we're going to begin implementing later this year. So please stay close if you're not already in the ambassador community. Please do. And what happens beyond today? So while the camp is over, we do meet Tuesdays. Every Tuesday, we hold our research meetings. So all are welcome to that as well. You don't just have to be an ambassador, but for the first half, we typically do ambassador business stuff. So you can skip that if you're not an ambassador or listen in. These are open discussions we'll be having. So, join in. We will keep this virtual community going and look for more in-person opportunities to keep gathering for health information. And as I mentioned, these other leadership tracks, they will be co-developing at the same time. So thank you all again. Please fill out the surveys. At the end of this call, there'll be another survey that's going to pop up automatically. Please take the time to fill that out if you can. We apologize for overwhelming you with all these surveys, but we did a little over planning for this camp, and we'll try and consolidate moving forward. And we thank you all so much for your time. This is just the beginning of our journey, and for some, it's a continuation. And thank you. And back to you, Emil.
Hey, Chris Anthony, did you have a question?
Oh, sorry.
Just quickly, if we have a conflict for tomorrow, can we pick up our swag bag type stuff? Can we coordinate that?
I could drop it off to you. So anybody
You do house
anybody
drops. Yeah.
no, anybody who's not there tomorrow and needs a swag bag, matter of fact, we could do it like this.
Anybody who's not there tomorrow and is a parent ambassador that has signed their commitment, you can get a swag bag. Let's add that caveat to it.
I've signed. I met with a meal for coffee. I signed.
Yeah, no, Chris Anthony signed. So I'm saying, so just let me know when's a good time for you, and I'll drop it off. And
We'll
and that
figure
goes
it
to
out.
anyone who
We'll
can't
figure
make
it
it
out.
tomorrow.
Yeah, and I still have to fill out the something. I'll reach out to you directly. I'm on it.
Okay. Got you. All right. Before we close out, Danny, was there anything you wanted to say, or did she have to leave? Oh no, she's
So
right here.
I'm here. I just want to thank everyone, but especially Nila, Salima. Thank you for all the support, your hard work and dedication, and for my parent ambassadors and every single person in here that is a caregiver or a family member. Thank you so much for just taking the time, and I really appreciate all of you.
Yeah, shout out to the Health Justice team, Emil and Danny. This is definitely the dream team. And Team AJE, we are growing as well. Nila, Salima, we are here building a village together with all of our brilliant new parent ambassadors and our parent leaders that are also on here. But I know there are a couple more questions, right?
I have something to chime in real quick. So I forgot to mention this at the end of my presentation, but I am starting a youth advisory board. And for youth who are who wants to be a part of it. What it's really going to be about is there going to be trainings to help with leadership development, leadership skills, also advocacy skills, so they know how to be an advocate for not only themselves but for their community. Also, they will have a chance to just talk about different issues they may feel that is overlooked, and basically just have a safe space to be with their peers and like have better advocacy skills. So if you have a youth that is interested, please let me know. This information will be going out next week, and also to sign up. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there so people can have that in mind.
You got
Nila, is
4
60 too
takers in the
old to
chat.
join?
Can you repeat
Huh?
that?
Is 60 too old to join? I'm just
The
asking
young at
for.
heart are
I'm
welcome.
Yeah,
I'm
young and heart are welcome.
asking for a friend.
Yeah, but I hope you're seeing, and we'll for sure connect you with the folks that are saying in the chat they got their young adults ready to roll.
Have you
Young
guys
at
ever
heart,
asked
only young at heart.
or let the DD council the DD council in DC know about that?
Sorry, say that again, Brandon.
So everybody has a DD council. Have you let like Allison White and those guys know about
Yes, we
this
are
youth?
in relationship with our DD council. We will
Awesome.
circulate all information.
Awesome.
We actually, one of our Brilliant Family Support Specialists is a voting member on the DD council. And thank you for flagging that. So we make sure that information. And Nila, so Allison White was the facilitator on the first panel at the ODR, the Office of Disability Rights event that was at MLK earlier this week. Allison is a staple in the community. And yeah, so yeah, we are in relationship with DD Council, and we will grow even stronger ties moving forward with our youth work. Thank you, Brandon.
Amy, I remember, Amy, I saw you had your hand raised too for a second, or just you already get your question answered? Oh, maybe not. Well, if there are no more questions, I appreciate everybody who came out. Nila, Salima, I appreciate the both of you for your presentations, and I hope that we can grow from this, especially Nila, when you talk about the youth panel, we need to talk about that. And because there's a lot we could do. But if everyone is still filling out their evaluations, I'm gonna stay on for the next 4 minutes. And so, no rush. But yeah, thank you so much, and please join us tomorrow if you can, in person, 11 to 1 at the Modern at Art Place, and just let me know if you need any additional information. But thank you all so much.